Hello everyone, and welcome to a very scuffed session of Star Trek Event Horizon, a Star Trek Adventures 2nd Edition game using the rules by Modifius Entertainment. I am the disembodied voice, E08 the Game Master, and joining me are three lovely individuals who'll meet in a moment, but I do have to at least say a few things why we are scuffed at the moment. Long story short, my graphics card had to get RMA'd, which means I am not only on one really old laptop, but I'm also on another laptop. It's a very scuffed setup, so if my microphone is wrong, if the player's microphones and audio is all over the place, I do apologize for that at the top of the session. We're also using Discord because Zoom decided to die 10 minutes before the session started. So we're doing what we can to play, because it's been over a month, and I want to play with these people. But let's get everybody introduced, and we'll get started. So, Peter, anything you want to shout out, and who are you playing?
Hey, everybody. I'm Peter, Petrus Aquinas. I am playing Lieutenant Commander Jaral, the Temerian Chief Engineer. Anything I want to shout out? I think it's on YouTube now, but I did an interview with Rod Roddenberry over on Secret Friends Unite. If you want to check that out, that should be kind of fun. Other than that, nothing else interesting. So
make sure to give me a link to that, because I try to link that sort of thing in the description.
Sure thing.
Awesome. Ravenslore, what do you got going on?
Hey, I'm Ravens. I'm playing acting Captain Oliver Mason, the CO of the U.S.S. Event Horizon. You could see me playing on Crucible Gaming. We have all kinds of games, Forbidden Lands, Pathfinder, you name it. There's a playlist there for it.
All right, and last but not least, Steadfast, what do you got going on?
Hello. It is I, Steadfast. I'm back. Happy to be here with Lieutenant Commander Zephyt, our lovely Denobulan pilot / security chief of the Happy Event Horizon, and now we're having some fun with station stuff. Other than that, I'm just glad that we're chilling. We've been real busy the past month, so glad we're back.
Indeed. All right, another thing that's going to break. I'm going to hit the opening credits button. Let's see if it breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, there don't appear to be any sparks shooting out of my computer yet. Nothing has caught fire, no regulation rocks out of the ceiling, so we're gonna push on. Yeah, and then goes Peter.
Yeah, exactly. He hasn't even rolled yet.
He hadn't even rolled yet, and Peter's already dying. It's great. So it has been a month. Yeah, it has been a month since we have played. And instead of doing the opening log on the player's side, I'm going to handle it on my side because it'll make more sense. So it's been about a month and a half, or 42 days, because that's how long it's been since we've played. It's been 42 days in universe since you did the initial Coaxial Starbase test. You've returned to Earth Stardock, where the Coaxial Starbase is just kind of chilling off to the side of Starbase 1. And basically all the amenities, all of the final sort of systems checks and installations are going into the Coaxial Starbase. Some tweaks have been made, and overall, you are now interviewing the crew that will be part of the Starbase whenever you are not actually connected to it with the Event Horizon. So what that means is so far you've interviewed for science officers, you've interviewed for chief engineers, you've interviewed for doctors, but one particular position has been very, very competitive. And that position is that of the station commander. And for that, the three of you are going to be interviewing 4 different candidates. Now, these 4 candidates, I've already given the players some handouts, but for anybody at home, I will list them out for you. So our first candidate is Lieutenant Commander Sonuri. She is a Cation. Then we have Shakos, son of Draro. He's a Klingon. Then we have Ensign Koku. She's a Betazoid. And then we have Lieutenant Neural, who is a Bolian. And I'm going to let the players sort of dictate their own sort of interviewing style and how they approach the interviews, but I thought this would be a very cool, like, not only like low-tech solution to our very scuffed setup, but it also kind of lets us see a little bit more behind the selection of candidates in the Star Trek universe, because to my knowledge, it's just kind of, we just sort of see like Picard signing off and say, all right, yeah, that person looks good, or, oh yeah, I want that person as my first officer, kind of a thing. So I thought this would be a fun little diversion to get us back into the swing of things. But for the moment, the 3 of you are in the conference room of the Coaxial Starbase. You have a beautiful view of Earth in the background. You've got the moon in the background as well. You've got little ships flying hither and thither. And at this point, you have just gotten a new yeoman. And your yeoman is named Thompson. And she has just poured you all your favorite drink, whether that's Ractigino, whether that's tea, or whatever it is that you prefer to consume. Thompson has your back. And at this, Thompson hands Commander Mason a data pad and says, well, sir, here is the final 4 candidates for your perusal. How would you like to proceed?
Well, that's a good question. I think me and the senior staff, we're going to brainstorm a little first, and then we'll reach out and call them in one by one.
Very good, sir. Do you want me in here with you all or waiting outside?
I'll wait outside. I'll give you a holler when we're ready.
Yes, sir. And she actually snaps like a full salute before she steps outside.
Okay. Please tell me I did hear that right. These are the last 4 that we need to do, correct?
That's the short list.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I'm ready for this to be over with, if I'm being completely honest.
It has been quite the ordeal.
This is perhaps the most important decision we can possibly make in regards to the station. The person in command of this station is going to be the person that keeps us alive when we run into trouble when we're not talked to it. Somewhere in the galaxy.
I always figured this should be the first one, and then commanding officer should be present for the selection of their own senior staff aboard a station like this. But
well, normally that would be the case, but in our particular circumstance, we're running into difficulties trying to find the right person for the job.
And seeing how that person will have to directly deal with our ship on a day-to-day basis, and we are its method of propulsion, need to work well with us, so.
It's definitely a unique station command, that's for sure.
Certainly. And I mean, determining the questions to ask these people is difficult. There's so many unknowns in our missions. I don't even know the best way to say it. Is that we're looking for what, adaptability?
Yeah, the ability to work on the fly. I don't know if you all have read the dossiers. Seems like they most come with some sort of science background, which I think would be beneficial for what we're looking for here, at least.
Yes. One that did stand out to me a little, Captain, was insofar as he has had some input into the coaxial warp theory. So that is something we should probably learn a little bit more about in terms of how he understands that. But it could be useful to have someone who understands what our ship is capable of and the various interactions that drive will have on his station.
True. There would be a bit of I don't know. We're predominantly a Federation force of Starfleet officers. Klingons have their own way of leading. It might cause some difficulty.
Well, it is rather outside the norm, I believe, for someone outside of Starfleet chain of influence to make it for an interview for station command. But if he's made it this far, it at least warrants our consideration. He must have some sort of reason that he's been pushed this far down the pipeline. I feel the same way about the ensign. It's unusual for an ensign to be put up for command of a station such as this, but
I don't even know how that would be possible.
Exactly. I'm a little confused about her presence. It seems her qualifications are well, but I'm unsure what type of experience she has with command, if any at all. Nothing in her service record that I could see appears to dictate any prior command experience.
Well, she wouldn't even have the command classes, but as far as I could tell by looking at her record, it would take her all of 15 minutes to pass them.
Right.
Just so everyone's aware, it's unlikely that Coca would be our commanding officer for the station at the end of these interviews. However, I have every intention of poaching this girl.
Right. That's a good idea. I think her services are most likely utilized in a different field other than station command. At least at present.
I would think so. I mean, she's too young. Some say I'm too young, and I'm substantially older than she is. Mm-hmm. So,
I think
go ahead.
The other one I feel like is worth bringing up is Lieutenant Noral. I mean, his rank seems relevant, but the notes from his previous commanding officers state a lack of self-confidence, whether that's out of over humbleness or complete lack of self-assurance is unknown. But I think with the mission that he will most likely be undergoing, you have to have some level of trust and security in yourself and your own decisions, since it's very by the seat of their pants, as one might say.
His dossier says that he focuses almost entirely on the safety of his crew, which is a CO's job. Safety of the crew and of the regulations. So, and lieutenant for a small station like this, I mean, that's reasonable. Probably would have to come with a promotion.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest question that I want to ask everyone is there concerns about coaxial warp technology? I've made it clear to you guys and to almost everyone that'll listen that I am very concerned about how Starfleet utilizes this tech. It's amazing if it's an explorationary drive. It is terrifying if it's a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
I would like their thoughts on that. And I think it's probably, if we each pick a major topic or a major question to ask them, and we each do that, and we go through the four of them, by the end we should have a candidate.
Idea.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be mine. What would be yours?
I think one that I'd like to focus on is to ask them a point of time in their history of experience that they had some sort of command of a group of individuals that was rather challenging, I guess, for lack of a better term. I'd like to get a basis for their command level, their command experience, and in what ways it appears that they prefer to lead their teams and still be working closely with the team here in the station and also our ship and be on the forefront of explorations. It will be good to know how they handle things.
I think since you were asking the question about the coaxial drive directly, I will ask them the question about how they would have they before and how they would approach a first contact situation as we are able to move across the galaxy fairly quickly into places that no one has ever been. We are likely going to be encountering species that have never been encountered before. And since the ship itself will likely be the spearhead, how will they support a first contact as not necessarily the second contact force, as will be part of the same group, but how would they approach that? So give us some insight into how well they lean into Starfleet's mission.
All right, that sounds like 3 reasonable questions to ask each of the candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we also ask them what their favorite food is so we know if the replicator is going to make the entire station smell?
I didn't think of that even once, to be completely honest.
I don't think I care.
Must be a Temerian thing. Never mind.
ELH is noting down, at some point spend 2 threats so that somebody replicates fish.
Yeah.
Microwave fish.
There's that one dude in engineering who just eats egg salad sandwiches.
Oh. And he left it on a shelf in a Tupperware in the coaxial closet, and I have to find it.
Oh, Lord.
The hero.
Next to the carburetor, I'm sure.
Right.
Gets in the carburetor. No.
Glorious.
All right, Thompson, let's send in Lieutenant Commander Sonori.
Yes, sir. And after a moment, stepping into the conference room is a very tall, very confident-looking Cajun. She is sort of a tuxedo cat, because it's an easier description, where most of her body is black, but her extremities, her hands, her feet, her tail, all of it is white. And she's wearing Sciences Blue, and she makes it a point to shake hands with each of you, if you'll let her, shake her hand. And then she'll sit wherever you want her to sit, whether that's at the head of the table or across from one of you. And she'll say, thank you all for seeing me today. I hope to impress you with this last round of interview. Personally, I am very, very excited that you even considered me for this opportunity. I understand that I am perhaps not the most qualified of applicants, but I am ready to make up for that inexperience or inability with my own gusto and own zeal.
Well said, Lieutenant Commander. Well, we're going to try to keep these brief. We still have a list of people to talk to. So what we're going to do is we've distilled down, each of us have picked out a major aspect of command in regards to this particular station, and we'd like to present that to you and get your thoughts.
Of course, sirs. What would you like me to answer first?
Jarrell, you might as well go first.
Very well. Lieutenant Commander, as this station and this ship is going to be hopping around the galaxy somewhat frequently, first contact is going to be a very regular occurrence. So I would like to know, have you dealt with any first contacts before? And then thinking forward, acting in a support role to a first contact, what would be your approach?
So Sonori thinks for a moment, putting a hand to her chin, and says, well, I can't say that I've ever been directly involved in a first contact, but during my time on the Larson, I was in charge of an away team that was dealing with second contact. I believe it was the... Oh, and she thinks for a moment as the GM tries to remember the species name. Ah, yes, the Varen. They were a very interesting species. They were almost mouse-like, and I don't mean that in terms of appearance, I also mean that in terms of size. So it was very interesting trying to deal with Federation standard sizing and, well, for lack of a better term, a miniature version of that. And all I can really say is that despite the whole joke about Caitians chasing mice, I felt no predatory urges to eat any of the lovely Vren. But I will say that moving forward, can't say that I have, like I said, I don't have the most experience with First Contact. I did do well at Starfleet Academy and that sort of training, but I will admit that it is one of the areas I am lacking in.
Well, thank you for your honesty, Lieutenant.
Of course.
Zavit?
Yes, pleasure to meet you, Lieutenant Commander Zeffit. Piggybacking off of that, this is a predominantly command role, as I'm sure you're well aware, but it does come with even further complications than a standard command of a station, because you will having to be in constant contact with the Event Horizon crew, communicate with them, coordinate with your own staff, and potentially deal with some rather interesting exploratory missions with very little lines of support back to standard Starfleet means. So what is your experience with command from your previous ship postings? I see you on the U.S.S. Express and the U.S.S. Larson. So tell me a bit about your command in both of those situations and what your general approach is to the methodology of command.
Of course, I'd be happy to. And she actually seems to brighten up a bit, like her ears perk up a little bit. She says, well, on the Express, the Olympic class, I was the quantum mechanics lab manager. I oversaw 4 individuals besides myself. And I'd like to say that even though we were Delta Shift, we were very, very enthusiastic, and we did things that, well, I mean, you all are command staff. You all know about lower decks buffer time. Let's just say we did not abuse buffer time. We very much gave deadlines that could be met, and we made sure that those deadlines were met no matter what it took, whether that was extra hours, off-shift work, getting our hands dirty. We did whatever was possible to get the mission done. Now, that was on the Express. On the Larson, my most recent posting, I was the science officer of Beta Shift. And overall, that meant that I was literally on the bridge during the Larson's exploration of space, and I did manage to take the big chair a few times, but I will admit that this is again one of my weaknesses, that I have no direct experience in the big chair. I've led away missions, I've led shuttle missions, but I've never been in the big chair for real, if that makes any sense.
Of course. So most of your command experience has been directly over a specific smaller group of a science team, then, correct?
That is correct, yes. But I will say, if you allow me to say so, that the Coaxial Starbase has, 20, maybe 40 people? I can manage 20 or 40 people easily.
Understood. Thank you.
And then Sonori looks at Commander Mason.
Acting Captain. I appreciate your enthusiasm, Lieutenant Commander. As you know, the coaxial warp is new. This is the only vessel that has a working drive, and this station will be the only station capable of moving the distances that coaxial drive allows us to move. And with every new technology, there's pros and cons that come with it. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this technology, both pros and cons. How do you see it used, or how would you like to see this technology utilized?
Let me think. Well, for one, the exploration benefits to Starfleet and to the entire Federation is almost understated. The fact that we could quite literally cross a galaxy to render aid, we could cross the galaxy to explore strange new worlds and seek out new life forms and boldly go, the whole line. But I will admit there is a con in that it is a very temperamental technology where, no offense to you, Lieutenant Commander Dural, but there are some instances where engineering is maybe not all quite there yet, where I fully admit that it is very possible that we could jump halfway across the galaxy and get stuck there because the coaxial technology breaks or for some reason is unable to get us back home. In other terms of cons, let me think. And she kind of drums her fingers together, kind of like that thinking thing that some people do when they're like scheming, like, yes, excellent. But she says, let me think, another con. Oh, I suppose the fact that if Coaxial Drive manages to make its way across the fleet, there won't really be a need for engineers anymore, except for maybe one or two to manage the coaxial closets. So we're going to have a lot of bored people, a lot of bored engineers. And I don't know about you all, but I definitely know a lot of bored engineers and what they get up to when they're bored.
Isolinear cards when the tower fell.
Sonuri kind of raises an eyebrow and she's like, what do you... Oh, right, Tamarian. Yes, I understand, sir. Yes.
Yeah, the translator just can't figure it out. And it's probably for the best.
We've gotten used to it, yeah. It's
Well,
amazing how
sir,
quick you can adapt.
Yes. Well, sirs, is that all the questions? Do you want me to say anything else? Whatever you need, I'm happy to provide.
No, Lieutenant Commander, I think that's sufficient. We have several people to go through today, but we will absolutely be in touch as soon as possible.
And she
Thank you for your time.
nods and stands up again, shakes all of your hands, and then she departs.
All right. Do we want to go over each one or do them all first and then brainstorm at the end?
I feel like we should at least touch on initial thoughts now, right?
That seems reasonable.
All
and
right.
then compare at the end.
Yeah.
By the way, what do you think?
I like the fact that she is honest about her abilities. Limited as she admits that they may be. That theoretically shows some humility and able to learn. Whether or not that's something that we need in a commander on the frontier is a different story, but it is a commendable trait for an officer.
Agreed.
I feel like it would definitely be throwing her into the deep end to see how well she'd be able to swim. I mean, a science officer who's only led science teams, it's going to be very different running a command of a station. You've got engineering, security, logistics, operations, science, medical. There's a lot of other pieces of the puzzle to consider. It seems like she's never had any experience or necessity to consider before. If she were to get the position, I think she'd either adapt very quickly due to her willingness to adapt, or she'll identify very quickly that it's not really meant for her. So.
Those command skills are transferable to a larger chair. So maybe we all start with a smaller team. But like you say, it is a big step, and commendable that she admits that clearly.
Yep.
I'm not sure it's commendable to point out that you didn't have the urge to eat a first contact.
Yep.
I don't think that needs to be mentioned because nobody should ever. Anyway.
Right.
I believe it was an attempt. I believe it was an attempt at humor to lighten the mood, but was it ill-advised?
Engineers. And the biggest con for the technology, in her view, was that it was temperamental.
Which we have experienced firsthand.
Certainly, but it shows a certain amount of short-sightedness in that the biggest con for This technology is not that it's temperamental; it's that it can change the entire balance of every species in the entire galaxy.
It is interesting, especially considering she is a science officer, that was her biggest con as well. You would feel that there'd be more, I guess, not to be rude or judgmental, but more highbrow thoughts for cons, other than some engineers might be bored sometimes.
But she does have an engineering background, so it makes sense that she'd be answering from an engineer's perspective as opposed to a strategic perspective. But all right, let's get Thompson to call in Shukos.
Shukos, yeah.
Shukos.
Mm-hmm. Better get that name right before he gets in here.
Well, once you have it
unless you would rather be headbutt, I mean that's an option.
Do we know anything about who Draro is? It says he is the son of Draro.
I will give you that information for free because we're not really using momentum or threat today. So I will give you that information for free. Draro is one of the minor houses of the Klingon Empire, and they are an entirely science-based family. So Draro comes from a long line of scientists and engineers.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, Thompson brings in Shukos, and strangely, you might have been expecting, another tall or muscular or just a beefy Klingon in general, because Klingon. But the Klingon that walks in is very wiry, very lean, very svet, I think is how you say it. But he kind of is brandishing his teeth like a Ferengi, where he's trying to sell you something already. And he actually brings in with him a bottle of blood wine. He doesn't give it to anyone in particular. He just sets it down on the table and sits where you indicate him. And he says, "Well, I'd like to thank you all for considering my application. Regardless of whether or not you take me or not, please have this bottle of blood wine from my family stores."
That is
thank you, Commander.
Very kind gesture. Thank you.
Yes, it is a 2308. It is one of the finest years of blood wine you will be able to find.
I'll take your word for it. Master Chief Specialist, is it?
That would be correct, yes, if you were to convert my KDF rank to Starfleet rank. And I will say, because I know this is a point of contention, that I am essentially asking to transfer immediately from the KDF into Starfleet, but I believe that my contributions to coaxial warp theory perhaps will allow us to sidestep needless, shall we say, interim time where I go through Starfleet Academy. Now, I will admit that I do need to study a little bit more about your Starfleet regulations and things of that nature, but I'm a very quick study. I'm very confident in what I do, and I'm very confident that I will be able to exceed your expectations in this matter.
We've had in Starfleet numerous cases of species outside the Federation serving as active officers on Starfleet vessels. We could guide you through that process if you were selected.
Very good. Then I hope to be an exemplary officer if you so choose me.
Well, let's get down to it. So the way this is going to work, each of us are going to ask a single question that we think is quite important about this particular posting, and would like to get your input on these questions. And I guess we'll start that off as we did last time.
Very well. Shukos, one of the large parts of this particular station's mission is going to be first contact, as we will be making our way across the galaxy very quickly. So, in light of that, I would like to know, have you had any first contact experience? What was that like? And then imagine going forward, if you were to be in the position of supporting a first contact, what would be your approach?
An interesting question, and I can understand why you would ask it. I will say that my family has not actually had the pleasure of first contact. However, I am very much knowledgeable about how the KDF would approach a first contact. Now, I will say that the KDF is a little bit militant when it comes to first contact, but that is not my philosophy. My philosophy is that of my house, the House of Draro, that we are to seek out and venerate other sciences, other ways of doing things, other cultures, other societies, where it would be my greatest joy to be a part of a first contact or to support the facilitation of a first contact. If I were to command this grand starbase and emotions around, I would say that I would reserve several suites for the incoming diplomats or other sort of attaches. I would make sure that all amenities are provided for, even if it means tearing out half of Deck 2 to accommodate a aquatic or perhaps even a Horta viable environment. Whatever is needed to facilitate first contact to its utmost ability.
So first contact in terms of first impressions are very important, or is it the showing of honor in a certain way?
I would say both, if I'm being honest. You need to make a very good first impression, and you also need to act with honor. And I will say that this is partially why I've applied to this assignment rather than trying to continue in the KDF. I simply enjoy the fact that Starfleet is less about the shooting and the headbutting, and this represents an opportunity for me to do more what I'm passionate about.
Thank you for your answer.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Pleasure to meet you. I'm Lieutenant Commander Zeffert. My question will be more oriented on your command history and methodology. With your time in the KDF, what has your experience been with command? In what way? Was it on vessels, Klingon starbases, Konos? And how do you feel that you would adapt to the difference of commanding a Federation station? You'll be working with numerous species, having to juggle all of their own individual beliefs, systems, all of that sort of thing. It would be very different than leading in any way that is simply a ship of Klingons.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because, as I just said, I am looking for a change of environment. I am looking for something that will allow me to expand my horizons and allow me to get to know the better species of the Milky Way galaxy. Now, in terms of command requirements, I have led several science vessels that have explored the near space around the borders of Klingon territory. I have led multiple away teams. I have led multiple research parties. However, I will say that most of those, Klingons being Klingons, did end in, shall we say, aggressive negotiations, but not before I attempted to defuse the situation in every instance. As for how I would treat the potential crewmen aboard my station, same way I treat my own family. And I think that is perhaps almost a tautology, where my station is the home of my family.
I see. And how does your family as a whole feel about you wishing to leave the Empire and join Starfleet? Are they supportive in your endeavors?
I would say most of them are. My mother personally does not approve, but I disagree with her on many fine points. If anything, most of my family is used to being looked down upon and otherwise not mistreated, but otherwise not as regarded as the warriors of the Klingon Defense Force. So this is nothing new. I am used to adversity. I am used to being looked down upon. I am used to proving myself.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, last question. You have some experience, a great deal of experience in coaxial warp technology and the research behind it. So you understand the means in which it operates and the capabilities that this particular drive has. Saying that, it is a piece of technology, and as a piece of technology, it comes inherently with pros and cons. can you list what you would think the biggest pros and cons, maybe one of each, would be in your view of this particular technology?
Well, I can say one of the biggest cons is that the Klingon Defense Force should not get their hands on coaxial technology in its totality. I do believe that my species has a long way to go, but they're not quite ready for what the coaxial drive would unlock for them in terms of exploration, in terms of peacekeeping, or, since they are Klingons, the annexation, forceful annexation of other territories. So I believe that would be the biggest con, is that my own species is not ready for it, and if they're not ready for it, well, who's to say other species are ready for it? The fact that Starfleet has made a entire starbase and an entire vessel, and the technology is not leaked, is a commendation for Starfleet's intelligence keeping. As for the biggest cons, or biggest pros, that's a little bit easier. When it's not being used for war, it allows us to explore strange new worlds that are farther out than anyone can ever imagine. And I do believe that if applied correctly, it might actually allow us one day to visit entire other galaxies.
Maybe we should explore the one we're in first.
Well, you know what they say about exploration is that sometimes you pick a direction and you just keep going because you just want to see what's out there.
Well, we are explorers at heart.
Indeed.
Yes, it's very good answers. That does raise a question, though. You say that the Klingon Empire is probably or potentially not ready for this technology, yet you, as a Klingon citizen, are essentially asking for complete access to this technology.
And he thinks for a moment, and then he says, he looks out the window at the passing ambulance.
Yeah. I just flew by.
Yeah, what was that?
Yeah,
But no, he says, well, I believe it would be comparable to your, pointing at Mason, it would be comparable to your species' background, where the nuclear technology is known, but the actual ability to construct a weapon using that technology is very classified and very controlled. So, yes, I do know the theory. I do know how I could make a coaxial device, but I've deliberately hampered myself and not made one for the Klingon Empire, if that makes sense.
It does. However, as station commander, you would have access to all of that information.
Of course, it's not needed. Again, I could create such a device basically in a cave with extra scraps.
Of course. Now, I'll ask the question from a more security-minded direction. Let's say you were to get the position, you would be in a unique position for your own empire to desire to get some of this more clandestine information. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that in one way or another at some point in time, you may be contacted by the Klingon officials unofficially to give them some of this information, which could potentially place you in a point to choose between Starfleet or your own nation and your own faction and your own people. Do you believe that you would be capable of siding with us if that eventuality were to occur?
My answer is this. I stick with my family, whatever that family may be, whether it is that of Starfleet, whether that is of my ship, whether that is of my laboratory, whether it is my actual House of Draro. I stick with my family.
All right. Well, thank you, Master Chief. We will we'll be speaking sometime in the future, I'm sure.
And he does the Klingon two-handed salute and says "Kapla," and then he steps out.
Kapla.
Kapla.
I will take the blood wine and put it underneath the table, so it doesn't look like we're getting any bribes, you know?
We can replicate blood wine.
I will admit it isn't the same. There's no two ways about that one. I'll give them credit where credit is due.
Do you have experience with blood wine? I've never.
Yes. It's not the most pleasant of experiences, but I have been known to partake in some situations in my.
The blood wine in that bottle and the blood wine that we replicate are chemically identical. The only difference between those two things is in your brain.
Correct, but the brain is pretty strong. I will say. I mean, I'll do a taste test later. We can all do a taste test. Compare it.
You're willfully believing a falsehood.
Probably, yes. Yeah. I'm not going to disagree with that. It's most likely correct, yes.
Okay. I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. We certainly cannot have an individual who works for a foreign government have full access to a coaxial drive and the schematics to build one, regardless if he thinks he can build one in the cave.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it would be a blatant and ludicrous security risk that at this stage is completely unwarranted. I don't think we need to make this leap in any way whatsoever at this stage. The development of the coaxial drive technology. So I tend to agree.
I wouldn't mind it on the crew. Outreach is good. Exchanging officers is good. But it's too much responsibility, I think.
I think he'd potentially be a great position to assist in engineering and science department with, continuing theory study for the warp drive and its further uses. I think that could be very in his wheelhouse, and would set him on the path to a future career in Starfleet if he wishes to pursue it in a grander way.
There's just too many steps. Even if the security risk wasn't there for him to get bridge qualified, for him to just learn the barest minimum for command would be.
Right.
It would take the two of you a couple months to be able to sit in the big chair, at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy coming from nothing is it would probably take him a year.
Agreed. Yep.
At least.
Which probably isn't the case for the ensign we're about to speak to.
Right. I was going to say.
She will be able to figure this out in about 15 minutes. Probably got qualified while she was waiting.
Yep.
All right, Thompson, show her in.
All right. This time there's a pause, maybe about 4 or 5 minutes. You may be starting to wondering, Thompson, what are you doing? Where's the ensign? When walking in from the other door to the conference room is Ensign Koku. Now, Koku does look human, except that instead of the irises of the eye being different colors, my understanding is that betas always all have like dark orbs for eyes, kind of a thing. But when she walks in, she's holding 3 things. The first is a carburetor for the coaxial drive. In fact, it looks like it may have literally been taken from the event horizon. The second thing is she is carrying a Denobulan fruit basket. And the third one is she's actually carrying a hockey stick as well. And she sets each of these items down on the opposite side of the table and says, well, I didn't think I would get this far, and I know this maybe sounds like a bribe, but I wanted to show a bit of appreciation for even considering me based on my service record. Lieutenant Commander Giral, this carburetor, as I've designed it, should provide a 5% increase in efficiency over your own. I've been monitoring and reading the logs such as I can from your mission so far, and I've done my best to improve on the technology. You don't have to use it, but it's here if you want it. And then she turns to Zevit. Lieutenant Commander Zevit, I will say that I didn't really have anything that I felt comfortable giving you in the security realm. I did consider maybe giving you a specialized TR-116, but I thought that might send the wrong message. So instead I got you a fruit basket. I hope that is at least amenable to your agreement.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much.
And then she turns to Commander Mason. Commander Mason, I will say that again, as a token of my appreciation, you were again a little bit hard to find a gift for, but this hockey stick is signed. I don't know. It was someone on the Red Wings. I don't know who the Red Wings are, but somebody from the Red Wings signed it.
That's very kind.
Yes. Well, I don't want this to be seen as a bribe. This is purely unrelated to my application. And she kind of sits down, and not the chair that you specify. She just sort of sits down and says, I know what you're going to ask. You're going to ask, why are you applying as an ensign? And the answer...
That is not my question.
Really, sir?
My question is, as an ensign, how did you get access to the plans to make that carburetor?
And she kind of looks at you, raises an eyebrow.
Do I need to fire my security officer?
Well, she kind of looks at you and raises an eyebrow and says, well, I figured I should know the technology that I'm potentially working with.
I find that answer vague and unconvincing. Could you please elaborate?
And she kind of looks at you as if confused and out of character. I should say that, much like Shokos alluded to, coaxial theory is out there.
True.
But not the specific schematics.
Yeah, I meant more my specific carburetor design.
Okay.
Right.
So, all right. I just wanted to make sure before I continued.
Yeah.
All right. So she says, well, she said I shouldn't really say this, but after a certain Admiral Skull spoke with Admiral Ignitrix, she maybe gave me a little bit of information that would be above my pay grade.
Ah.
Interesting.
Okay. We'll, of course, verify that. But please answer your first question that you were asking yourself.
Well,
why is an ensign applying to be a commander of a space station?
Well, as you can probably tell from my service record, I won't regurgitate it to you, but I have been, shall we say, limited by the time I've spent alive so far. By the time I was 8, I was already in higher mathematics. I was already within the utopia of learning within the planet of Beta Z. By the time I was 16, I was finally able to apply for Starfleet Academy, and I basically blew through that in about 1.5 years. My mind is always ready and eager for more information. I am always ready to learn and do so much more, but I am limited by the amount of time I have spent alive, where I feel like I have ideas and I have promise and I have just the ability to do such great things, but I'm being held back by the fact that I'm an ensign, and that the only way to grow in rank is to sit there and do the same thing over and over and over again, or to invent something wild, to do something as crazy as create that carburetor, even though I shouldn't have had the information in the first place. I am, well, you've seen my service record. I am not like other Betazoids. I don't have telepathy. I don't have empathy, or empathic abilities, I should say. And that means that I am essentially the runt of the litter. I have so much to prove, and I'm just so eager to show not just you all, but just the entire universe that I am something unique, and that I am willing and able to do whatever it takes to leave my mark on it.
That's all fantastically said, and I would like to focus on the point that whether or not other people believe it or you are being observed, everyone is unique and perfectly capable of achieving any goal that they set their mind to. And while your mind may be much smarter than many others, experience is still a very key piece to any sort of command role. You appear to be vastly intelligent, far more so than me. But I'm curious, do you have any experience with command of a team of individuals? Have you led someone onto a planet where they could have lost their lives? The feeling of losing a team member due to a failure of your own command is something that every command officer needs to experience at some point in time. And to jump the gun, to dive into the deep end, to skip all of the processes and seek command of a station this size with a crew that is rather expansive is a very large leap. And while I concur with the thought process of really wanting to prove yourself, you need to be able to prove it to yourself as well first, that you are ready to handle this before it something happens that irrevocably changes your view of your future.
Well, sir, to answer that question, if you allow me to point out, I am currently the science officer of the U.S.S. Alva, a Galaxy class, and I am no spring chicken, I believe is the expression, where I have led multiple away teams, where it has been, shall we say, challenging to keep everyone safe and to make sure that the ship itself is safe. In fact, there was a situation on, as the GM remembers the planet name, Tavarian 5, where we were exploring a thermal fissure when an earthquake suddenly opened up a fissure next to the thermal vent, and I nearly lost one of my away team members. Now, I had a choice. I could either attempt a risky beam out, or I could get down there, as I was the only one nimble enough to slip through the crack and maybe get a transporter enhancer down there. I was given a choice. I could either risk my own life or risk the life of my crewmen. Naturally, I picked the former. I risked my own life, my own limb, to bring back that officer, and I did. He made a full recovery. I've also been on a mission where I have been asked to choose between the life of my officer and the life of a first contact individual. My answer was that both of them survived.
Follow-up question, Ensign.
Yes.
Have you taken the Kobayashi Maru?
Now, do you consider cheating like Kirk to be taking it?
As much as I respect James Kirk's approach, as the captain himself would admit, that's not necessarily the point of the test.
No, the point is to see what you do when you're against impossible odds and all the chips are on the table, I'm aware.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that, and she kind of taps her mind, the problem is I see past such falsehoods very quickly. I always look for another solution that isn't on the table.
And that's excellent thinking, since we will have to adapt, especially out where we're going to have to adapt and have solutions that may not be even in our playbook or even remotely thought of.
Yes,
but
and we all have to prepare for Peter win the dice fell moments.
Correct. But I believe more of my point, Ensign, is the thing that sprung to mind here was your answer of both survive when you had an either or. Sometimes it's not that simple. I'll give you an example with a story, right? In a recent mission, we had an instance where I could either fix the drive of the ship or fix the shields, and there was no other way. Now, I am well aware of how this ship operates, and I attempted to find a way to fix both at the same time. But we were in a bit of a crunch, and sometimes time is an issue. How would you deal with it if you only had the options in front of you, and one of them would lead to a failure on one side of the equation?
She thinks for a good 30 seconds, contemplating her response, and she finally says, if it is a true no-win scenario, where loss is inevitable, I would choose the option that would lead to the less loss of life, and the less loss of my crew, the less loss of my ship, the planet, whatever it is I'm protecting.
Okay. All right. you've been on away missions and such. I don't believe you mentioned a first contact. So I would like to know, granted, not a wide amount of experience, but Galaxy class tend to be involved in these. So do you have any first contact experience? And I know that you would have a book answer, but I would like you to take a minute and think, how would you approach a support role with a first contact, as that is one of the primary mission objectives of this vessel and station?
And at this, she actually kind of smiles and says, well, I will answer your question with another question. Are you familiar at all with the Xindi aquatics?
Yes.
Well, the name of the species is currently eluding my mind. I will admit that sometimes when I get excited, little bits of naming sometimes slip my mind, but I did meet a species that was very similar to the Xindi aquatic. They were very much a interesting species to make first contact with because we didn't really have anything that would allow us to talk to them, at least at first. But as science officer, I worked with the communications officer and developed a sort of safe sonar ping that allowed us to talk back and forth.
Interesting.
Now, as for the second part of your question, the support functionality, I do believe that it is my ability and duty as a science officer and potential station commander to facilitate whatever it is that the Event Horizon is doing, regardless of what it is you all are doing in the first place. So if for whatever reason first contact involves firing phasers, I'll get you the best firing solutions. If first contact involves transporting 1,000 gallons of blood wine, I'll find out a way to do it without spoiling the blood wine. By the way, that was a Klingon out there, right? I wasn't imagining anything. That was a Klingon?
You are not imagining anything.
That is correct.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
I am absolutely fascinated with you. I don't think I've met another member of Starfleet that rivals my own intelligence. It's remarkable. Mason says that with an absolute straight face. He's not even bragging. He's just.
Yep.
He's nerding up right now.
Mm-hmm.
Zephyr will try not to actually giggle a little.
I think I've read some of the papers that you co-authored for that Cochrane Medal of Excellence for your contributions for multiple dimensional study. You may show me up if you end up working here. That would be
well, sir, if I am being honest, a lot of that work was already done by the U.S.S. Cerritos. I simply took what they had scanned, took what they had acquired, and then applied what I knew of multidimensional study and created the unified field theory for multiversal technologies.
It was genius. And that's not understating it. A couple things that perhaps we could debate, but regardless, that's not the point of what we're doing here. I have two questions. One of them's really quite easy, and one of them's a little more interesting. The first one is, how are you still an ensign if you were on the alpha ship of a Galaxy-class starship?
Same way that a certain Geordie LaForge was piloting the ship and then became a chief engineer in a very short period of time. Again, I am limited by my time alive, my time of existence, where my commanding officers have given me the ability to be the Alpha Shift and Beta Shift science officer of the Alva, but they have not seen it fit to increase my rank despite my many commendations and my many exemplary showings in the field. They believe that, perhaps much as you may or may currently still hold, they believe that I need more practical experience before I can even be given the test to become a lieutenant or a lieutenant commander, etc., etc.
Practical experience is important. I mean, that said, I rose through the ranks quicker than most. So there is a route for someone who is bright and dedicated and loyal to make their way through the ranks. Anyway, that's interesting. I would have expected before you were assigned to Alpha Ship that you would have been promoted at least once. I'd have to talk to your captain, see what his insight or her insight would be on that particular case. But that brings me to my second question. I'm sure you'll have quite a bit of insights on this. So try to limit this to one thing for each. New technology, new capabilities, geopolitics, pros and cons. What are the pros and cons, do you believe? Or what is a pro and a con that you believe comes with this coaxial technology?
Well, much like the multiversal and multidimensional technologies that the Cerritos has discovered and used, it opens up a lot of new possibilities, not only of science and engineering, but also potentially of warfare. And I very much would not like to see this technology used to deliver bombs, to deliver conquering forces, to deliver something that would ultimately decimate the geopolitical situation on a planet or a territory. This technology needs to be handled very, very carefully, where right now it is known as a theory to many, and she points at the carburetor, if I can make that, I give the rest of the universe another 10 years before they figure out how to make it themselves, if not more. Which means within that time span, Starfleet needs to decide how to control the technology, how to keep it from being used as a weapon, and how to use it best for exploration and peacekeeping, as well as maintaining the frontier.
I estimate 5 years.
The Klingons are a little
Maybe
bit
less.
closer, but if that Klingon out there is who I think he was, he's a little bit more preoccupied with his blood wine than the coaxial drive. He didn't actually give you that bottle of 2308, did he?
It's under the table.
Though I guess I can't really say too much about that. I am literally giving you a fruit basket, a hockey stick, and a carburetor, so maybe I'll just shut up while I'm ahead.
Huh. Well, Anson, I believe that's the questions that we had for you for today. I will certainly reach out to your prior captains and XOs to get their insight into more insight into your career.
Of course, sir. And thank you all for seeing me, and I hope I have not imposed too much. And
not at all.
Much like to Lieutenant Commander Sonore, she does snap a Starfleet salute, and then she leaves through the other door, not the main door. She leaves through the other door.
Where does the other door go?
Oh, I mean, it's so out of character. It's all just one sort of promenade, so you exit out onto another part of the promenade, kind of a thing.
Yeah, instead of being over here, you're just over here.
Yep.
Okay. That was fascinating.
I like it.
Oh,
like
I agree.
her a lot.
I think she's a unique and I think a fantastic Starfleet officer. I still don't believe that command of the station is what she should be placed in, but I think that we should consider extending her an offer of a immediate promotion and station as some sort of chief science attaché for either the Event Horizon or the station itself. I think that it would be a good posting for her to expand her horizons and experience more unique and varied experience in the field.
Qualifying to become a lieutenant is one thing. Qualifying to become a crew member of the Event Horizon is a different thing entirely.
Oh, I agree. But I hate to draw the comparison here. I think that you would be able to guide her very well. It seems that you share some similar experiences, and I think that she is not used to being challenged intellectually by any of her superiors in the past. And I think that being able to be on a posting where she is in a way, challenged intellectually by someone that is outranking her, I think that it would make her become a better officer in the command scheme of things. I think that she would respect your word and your orders more than she may respect those of her current commanding officers.
What do you think, Jerome?
Overall, I was impressed with her. I do still sense a lot, as much as she tried to assuage it. I do sense a little bit of a lack of experience, not in the sense of like a willingness to, because there's very, very much that. But that was why I pressed her on the Kobayashi Maru. Was particularly as much as we might want to admit, as much as we might not want to admit, that there are no-win scenarios. When we're out on the frontier, there are simply moments that there may be an explanation later when we have time, but there isn't immediately. And so there's an adaptability, but it has a limit at this point with her, is what I'm sensing.
She believes she can outsmart any situation that she runs across.
Yes. Which is why she would mention Jim Kirk. Able to outthink a great many situations, but even he came up against a few that, at least initially, were insurmountable.
You might be able to outthink 99% of them, but you can't outthink them all.
Yes, and sometimes it's the 1% that is the one that breaks you. And so,
and I think that it's important to have that 1% break someone to see how they handle that situation and how they recover after. And I just don't think that she's had that happen yet. So it's too early to tell, how she would be if that situation were to arise.
Yeah. I know that she is confident in her abilities, and that is an excellent quality. But if she could temper that,
I think she's an amazing asset for the station and most likely for the Event Horizon itself, should she become qualified. I don't believe that we could take an ensign, even a newly promoted lieutenant, and put them in command. There's 40 other people that would question her command immediately.
There's that.
But I think after I speak with her previous COs and XOs, we should look towards, if it's appropriate, promoting her to lieutenant and getting her on.
I agree.
Geralt also pulls out a tricorder, sets it next to the carburetor, opens it up, and just starts a scan.
Send me those files when you're done.
Is she right? Yeah. Was she
lied.
Correct?
It's not 5%. It's 7%.
Ooh.
How did she? Oh man, we're gonna have to figure that out.
Geralt is impressed.
Yeah, I like her. A lot.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, we got one more. Let's get Lieutenant Morale in.
Let's do it.
So Naral walks in. He is a Bolian, and of course that means he's got the blue skin with that sort of ridge-like feature down his face. But he looks very relaxed. He looks very chill, very vibing, as it were. And he kind of shakes all of your hand, not as strongly as Sonuri did, and not as respectfully as some of the others, but you get a very, very much a dude abides vibe from this guy.
Nice. He's a bro.
He smiles, shake your hands, and goes, "Thank you all for agreeing to see me. I realize I'm probably the last applicant, so I'll try to answer your questions and let you get back to your deliberations as quick as possible. But I gotta ask, was I supposed to bring a gift? Because I feel like everybody else out there had a gift for you."
No, I was shocked by the frequency of gifts for an interview process.
Well, I guess that makes me feel a little bit better. I was a little bit worried that I'd missed a memo somewhere.
No gift required that will not work against you in the interview process.
Were you brainstorming a fallback plan?
Right.
My fallback plan was to do something very inventive with a tricorder.
Ah,
Now, of course, that tricorder may have exploded in 2 hours, but hey, that would have been 2 hours of inventive genius.
Okay.
interesting. I may have to ask you about that later when we're not dealing with a conference room situation and possibly in the safety of a lab.
Of course, I'd be happy to share my ideas with you. But no, more to the point. I don't know how you've been asking the others, but I'll simply open up by saying that I know that I don't really have a whole lot of science background. In fact, most of my background is in command and leading of away teams and the Night Watch. But I guess the best way to describe myself is the fact that I make sure everybody comes back alive. And if I can't do that, then I make it a point to make sure that that sacrifice meant something. I don't like I do not like needless sacrifice.
All right. Well, we do have questions, and I'll start with mine if you don't mind.
Of course, please. By the way, can I refill your drink? I noticed it's a little bit low.
Sure.
He gets up, refills your drink, and sits back down.
Holy
All
shit,
right.
the stick is signed by Chris Chelios. This thing's worth a fortune.
Gerald just kind of pauses for a second. He's not sure what to do with that. Anyway,
I believe the
mentioned
expression would be Mason when the hockey stick fell.
I think that we now have a new statement to enter into the Universal Translator. I will have to send it back to my people.
Mhm.
He pulls out a literal notepad from a pocket and writes it down.
Nice.
Nods to himself, closes it, and puts it back in, zips up the pocket. I quite enjoy sending linguistic inventions back to my people. Anyway, you mentioned that you were in charge of the Night Watch, acting commander, multiple away missions. One of the things that this crew, this ship and station, what we are often going to be doing is first contact missions. So I just wanted to know what kind of experience you have with that. And since you've been on away missions with that, if you were to be in charge of the whole operation or the supporting from a starship, what's your thought process on that?
Well, I have been in charge of second contacts. I have been in charge of third contacts. First contacts, haven't had the pleasure yet. But I will say that no matter which contact it is, it's very important to keep the vibe nice and cordial. Make sure everybody's feeling comfortable, everybody has what they need to come to the table ready to share and compromise with one another. Because if you aren't ready to compromise, you can't negotiate. And if you can't negotiate, you can't do first contact properly.
Okay, I thought there was something else. I thought there was a second part to that. All right, I'll go ahead.
It was encapsulated in what?
No, you're good. You're good. Very clearly, you have rather significant command experience. Your most recent posting, the UNS Renate?
The Renate,
which-
yes.
Renate, wow.
I understand
of
it's
course.
French.
Yes, yeah. Very good. So, how long have you been on this posting?
Let me
UNS
think.
Renate?
I think this is 2.5 years.
I see. We have a note in your file that makes it seem like that you were not, interested in the position until your commanding officer kind of brought it up and pushed the subject upon you.
Oh, you mean for this assignment? Well, I guess I can say this much. I was very comfortable aboard the Renat. I was doing my best to keep everyone safe, keep everybody engaged, keep everybody comfortable. I will say that, should this application fall through, I get to go back to my CEO and say I told you so over a nice game of Parcheesi squares.
What do you mean? I told you so. In this, are you immediately under the impression that you were not going to get the position, or?
No, I hold no illusion. The people that I was out there in the waiting room with, they are grossly overqualified, especially that ensign, whoever the hell they were. They were just sitting there, just building whatever that is, and he points at the carburetor. She literally replicated parts while she was waiting. I couldn't even begin to tell you how that thing works.
I see. Well, luckily it is a command position. So I guess you tell me then a little about your strengths when it comes to command and what your experience would bring to the table that perhaps your lack of engineering prowess, what you can make up for it in the command side of things. Agree?
Yeah, that's actually a very easy question to answer. My away teams are always fast, efficient, by the book, but also very flexible, where if a situation arises that is unplanned or a situation calls for a bit of extreme unconventional thinking, I make sure to solicit opinions from all of my officers under my command. I apply that based on my own judgment of the situation, and then we proceed forward in a way that achieves the most logistical, safety, and otherwise merits of success.
Very good. Thank you.
Prometheus class, huh?
Yes.
Prometheus class would have a larger crew than the station by a long ways.
Not the Renault. It's only a crew of about 40. We're one of the rare few Prometheus class that literally flies itself.
Which part of it? Oh,
Yes.
Yes. Interesting. What are your thoughts on a ship being out there that's faster than the Prometheus?
Well, it's it's exciting. I've been, aboard a Prometheus class. We can get up to warp 9, 9.975. We can get going pretty fast. In fact, I believe technically we're one of the fastest ships in the fleet before whatever technology you use for the Coaxial Starbase. So I guess it would be coaxial. But no, I mean, this represents a new opportunity for me to go somewhere I've never been before, where no Bolian has gone before.
So I've asked this question to each of the applicants that made it to the shortlist. And it's essentially discussing the of implementing a new technology, especially one that's as strategic as the coaxial warcraft. Much like, we were talking about the Prometheus. The Prometheus is warp 9.97 capable, the fastest ship that comes out of the dockyards. It's suddenly a turtle overnight. But what are your thoughts on coaxial warp? Good and bad.
Well, I think I've already alluded to the good, in that it allows us to go new places that would have been further much out of our reach. As for the negatives, I'd suppose it is the negatives of any sufficiently advanced technology, where in the wrong hands it can be used for very bad things, and depending on who you're interfacing with, they might see it as some form of witchcraft or magic. I believe the expression is sufficiently advanced technology is no different than magic, something along those lines. So, am I advocating that we give this to everybody? Nah, I think we need to keep it close to the vest. But I do think there's probably going to be a time in our near future where somebody, not me, not you, somebody above us that gets paid a lot more than anybody does, to decide Starfleet's official stance on letting this technology out of Pandora's box.
Well, it's going to get out eventually anyway.
Exactly. But I do believe that it is crucial how the box is opened and when.
I agree. One last question, Lieutenant.
Of course.
What do you think about teenagers?
Teenagers. Well, are they mine or? And he laughs. Sorry, old Bolian joke. Long story short, I have a lot of brothers and sisters back home, a lot of them younger than me, and I'm used to dealing with teenagers.
All right, that's all I had. Gentlemen, do you have any other questions?
No, I think that covers everything I was focused.
Okay.
Did you have any questions, Lieutenant?
No, just if you want me to refill your drink on the way out.
Thank you. I'm all set.
That's all good. Thank you so much, though.
Lieutenant, I do have one more question.
Of course, sir.
If I offered you this job, would you actually take it?
And at that, he actually gives a very Bolian smile. And he says, well, I would have to think about it.
That's fair. I appreciate your honesty.
I appreciate for you entertaining this all the same.
All right, Lieutenant, we'll be in touch. Thank you.
He gets up, does the dude handshake with everybody, and then he departs.
Interesting. I'm glad you brought it up. I was going to mention as well. I don't think that he really. He might consider the position of to it, but he seems content. Exactly. I think that he enjoys his crew and his position, and I think that if he were to continue in that position, he'd probably get a promotion sometime in the next couple of months on a different ship and continue along with what he's. He seems less eccentric and excited about the possibility, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but
he is wonderfully boring, isn't he?
Right, exactly. Yes. And at least he's I guess he knows what his pros are, right? He's very open about the fact that he's like, yeah, not really my style, but here I am. It's interesting, for sure.
If he were promoted on the Prometheus class that he's on, the Reddit, he would be assigned to a new ship. It's unlikely he would stay there. Right. Certainly, once you reach Lieutenant Commander, and Commander is when you start moving around.
Sure.
Right. Ensign, yeoman, ensign, even lieutenant staying on a single vessel, a large one, is relatively common, but Lieutenant Commander, that's when you start moving about, right? You're typically not going to stay put. So if he's due for promotion, I mean, we could look that up pretty easily, but if he's due for promotion, he'll have to go somewhere. I like him personally.
I think he's very grounded, down to earth. To use, I believe those are human metaphors.
They are. He didn't express joy in not wanting to eat somebody.
Right.
There is that.
I think he's definitely the one that has the most experience and I think skill set when it comes to personal interactions, whether it be crew relations, leadership, from command experience or first, second, third contact protocol. I think that he is most suited for those type of command tasks.
All right, I'm going to throw out. Here's my perfect situation. Now, this is just me speaking. I don't want to speak for yourselves. I want all of us at this table to voice our opinions. I would like to see Lieutenant Norrell promoted to Lieutenant Commander, assuming his record suggests that he should.
Mm-hmm.
Ensign Koku promoted to lieutenant,
Mm-hmm.
and have them as CO and XO of the station. And a little bit, I will admit, just a little bit of that is just to piss off Sotek.
Okay.
Because now he'll have to get
Sotek on the
qualified.
station. He's like, I sense a disturbance in the force. This is highly logical.
He'll have to get qualified, and he'll have to serve on the Event Horizon.
Oh boy.
And he's not going to want to clean out Billy. Oh, it's going to be so good. It's great. Anyway, that's just a little bit of that, but I wanted to put it on board. There's a little bit of that.
Mason, his schadenfreude is strong.
Write it down in your notebook. Write it down in your notebook.
I think of the four, I agree that I believe Neural is in the best position to be promoted to the commander of the station. I think it is a bit bold to seek to give Ensign Koku a promotion to lieutenant commander along with XO of the station. I think that's a lot of responsibility.
Just lieutenant.
Question: Lieutenant JG or full lieutenant?
She's got to go through the same process all of us did.
Okay.
Just making sure.
So you wanted to try to promote her to Lieutenant JG and what, science chief?
I'd like to get her as probably science. Third officer, maybe? I'd like to get her in command.
I can see that. Give her some sort of command training and experience. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Are you wanting to do anything with Shukos?
Or Sonori, the first one?
I don't think that we need to give them all positions on the Event Horizon at all. It's not that I dislike Lieutenant Commander Sonori, but I think she had some interesting takes on things. I'm not sure if she's I don't know if mature enough is the right word, but in the right mental headspace to be on this sort of mission.
I agree.
I think that Shukos could be beneficial due to his experience with coaxial technology and whatnot, but I do wonder if him and Ensign Koku, it would make him somewhat redundant based on her similar qualifications and skill set.
It comes back to that Pandora's box.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, this technology is going to be available to everyone.
Right.
But as Lieutenant Norrell said, we need to be in charge or in control of how that gets released as best we can.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of value in officers trading with other empires, other homogenies, and Starfleet. But I don't think this is the vessel for a Klingon. Not today. 5 years from now, maybe. But today is not the day to put a Klingon, regardless of how above board his record is.
Now, just to play devil's advocate on that same point, it could be beneficial in the future when it does come out for us to have already had a Klingon working with us, and it, that could dissuade some of the dissenters that may come out and claim that we were keeping the technology to ourselves and keeping it quiet and hiding it and doing, nefarious things with it. If we can show, well, we had a Klingon civilian on the station for the past X amount of years. So just a devil's advocate point of the same. Same thing that you're making to flip it around, I guess.
Well, Starfleet's giving us the ability to choose our CO, not necessarily the staff. If they want him here, they'll put him here.
Hmm.
But if they're letting us choose who gets full access to our computer systems,
Hmm.
unfortunately, that has to be someone from Starfleet.
Right. Agreed.
Now, if we had a Worf who was a Starfleet officer,
Mhm.
I would absolutely consider it. So, just to be clear, I am not anti-Klingon.
Right.
I am pro-Starfleet.
Hmm. Well,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to suggest that, Jural, you've been relatively quiet about the recap, I guess.
Well, seeing as I'm more limited in terms of command experience, the two of you are much more suited to making more of the overall decision making. But I would tend to agree with both of you on your points. I think that Neural is definitely someone who we should at least offer the position to. Whether or not he takes it is a completely different question. But in the case that he doesn't, out of our options, I think, as long as she's willing to be taught, Sonori might be our better choice, just simply because the staff under her, if we were to go with Goku, we would have to be dealing with more interactions with the staff, and primarily, Captain, I think that your focus should be on the mission and the event horizon itself rather than dealing with personnel issues on the station. So
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're going to have to give... I mean, I would love to give Neural a choice, but my expectation is that Starfleet will transfer him to...
very likely, if you frame it in that way, he would likely accept. But I just think that we're just as a fallback with his exploding tricorder. We should have an option.
Have they named the station yet?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking about that too.
No, as far as anyone knows, it's just the Coaxial Starbase. Nobody's actually named it.
Dumbass name.
Yeah, they gotta work on that for sure.
I will make up a plaque and let them know what we came up with. All right, so let's. I'll review the files for both Lieutenant Neural and Ensign Koku.
Did you wish to contact her commanding officers before?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Lieutenant Neural, of course. Before we make any major move, we'll want to talk to their superior officers in detail at length. See if there's an appropriate promotion to be had, and offer them the positions as, I guess, station commander and third officer.
Yeah.
I have put it in chat, therefore it is now sealed. Well done.
Nice.
All right. So that is actually going to be the end of today's session. I thought that went really well. Like, I was a little bit worried going in that I wasn't going to be able to differentiate the 4 applicants, because interviewing's already hard, but to do interviews as an applicant, it was a nice challenge, I would say.
I can't believe you volunteered for 4 interviews.
Yeah. I was like, damn, that's crazy.
That's nuts.
No,
I'd love to be able to get 4 interviews in that much time.
I love pushing my limits and testing how well I can role play, so I love this sort of thing.
Yeah, that was very fun. Very unique session.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you went for Koku as second, third officer, and I was like, I don't know if I'm giving her enough positives. It's like she might just have to be the odd one out.
If she wasn't an ensign, she would have won that competition for sure.
I agree. I think it's just, I mean, it is the fact that her rank is just not there, and as much as, you know, she may be really smart and deserve more, the rank exists for a reason, you know. So.
No, but I was looking at her and I was like, do I make her a lieutenant? Do I make her an ensign? I'm like, if I make her an ensign, then we get cool interplay dialogue of is she ready kind of a thing.
Sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If she was a lieutenant, she would have been. I would have picked her anyway. I can't speak for the other two. But.
No, I tend to agree. I think her skill set is very correct for what we're looking for.
So that would put what? SoTech as XO?
SoTech as XO, yeah. Let me make a note of that. SoTech.
Yeah.
So. And for once, SoTech sheet is actually in Foundry. I verified it. He actually has a sheet in Foundry.
He's a real boy.
He exists.
He exists. Woo!
Cool. There we go. Oh yeah, I see him.
But I will go through, and I'll make a note to go through and do Noral and Koku. I'll get you sheets for all of them by next session.
Sweet.
Outstanding. Awesome. That was cool. That was very interesting.
Fun. Yeah. Awesome. All right, well, Twitch, stick around because we're going to raid somebody, but YouTube, we'll see you later. Bye-bye, YouTube.